It's a very special edition of Take Note. We'll tell you why in just a second. Well, hello everyone. I am Mark Despotakis. Welcome to this special edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast. Why is it special? It is our 100th edition of the podcast, and we're going to be doing something special today, looking back, not at all 100 editions, but at some of the highlights over time. And joining me to do that today is Becky Sensor. And Becky, hi, how are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
So the reason you are here is because this is your 5th appearance on the podcast, which makes you the person who has been on the podcast more than anyone in our 100 episodes. So I wish it was like Saturday Night Live and we had the jacket and but since you're the start of the 5-timers club, maybe we can like develop something, and like at the conference, maybe we'll do something for the 5-timers. What do you think?
Excellent. I have so many ideas.
Okay. Oh, perfect. All right. We're in. That's the thing about Becky. Becky always has ideas. And I said many years ago, like before I even worked at PMEA, like Becky Sensor is the teacher I want to clone because I don't think she ever stops thinking. She never stops working, never stops moving. That's you.
Sunday afternoons, I'm pretty.
Okay. There's you book a few hours. So, okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. That's fair. Well, before we get into talking about the podcast, I like to check in with PMEA members and see how things are going. So here we are, over halfway through the school year. How's the year going for you? And we also should say, in addition to teaching, you are PMEA's President-Elect. So you will be incoming here, not too long from now, but you're already on the executive committee. But tell us about how the school year is going for you.
The school year is great. It's been a really great year. It's gone super fast so far. I feel like it's like a snowball that just keeps picking up momentum and going faster and faster. But the school year's been going great. We have a few new initiatives and things we've started, and that's been really fun. And our numbers are exactly where we wanted them at the beginning of the year, and we're excited about that. And we're excited about everything happening at school. And my time with PMEA this year has been informative and educational for me, getting to learn what it's like to be on the XCOM, and I couldn't have better people on there with me. And it's been a great year.
Yeah. All right. And we're all eagerly working and getting ready to be back in Kalahari here in just a couple months, which I know that's a lot. XCOM is doing a lot of things on that, and we're in festival season, so you guys are always busy with what's going on there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I've got to go to a few of our district concerts. My youngest Molly is in. She was a district band in District 3 here and a district chorus. And the student musicians always, no matter where we're at, blow me away with their passion and their preparation, everything they do. And the different fests I've been able to go to this year, and we have some new adventures going on across the state with some new a cappella groups and modern bands, and some new fests that have started, and it's a really cool time to be involved with PMEA.
And how cool it must be for you at this time that you're doing your regular job as a music teacher. You're on PMEA XCOM, and you have one of your children is currently involved in PMEA festivals. I mean, it must be like PMEA nonstop for you.
It kind of is. It kind of is, and it's been really fun. Some of you people out there that know me know that I have a pair of Converse that are blue and have PMEA stitch on the back, stitched, and I've been wearing those a lot because I've been doing a lot of PMEA things lately. But I don't think of myself in any way as like a PMEA president-elect or anything when I go to Molly's concerts. I'm just that like really proud mom sitting there and watching her and her friends do what they really love to do.
Awesome. Yep. And we know there are so many more parents that get to do that, which is such a cool experience that not only students will remember, but the parents will remember for the rest of their lives. So, All right, so let's turn to the topic at hand. The 100th edition here of Take Note. So, I think what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about some types of people that we've had on the podcast, and we're going to actually show some clips and talk a little bit about that. I think the value that I have found in the podcast is, trying to do a lot of different things and appeal to a lot of different audiences where we're talking to PMEA members and talking about the good things that they're doing to help share that. We're talking to national names in our space. We're talking to people that we never would have thought of would have some connection to music and can talk about it. We're talking about trends in music education. We're talking about policy in music education. We're trying to do a lot of things. We've done a lot of things, I think, in 100 episodes. Is that fair to say, as someone I know who listens to the podcast?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I listen every time they come out, but then going back and listening to some things over the last few years and the last 99 episodes, I forget some of the people you've talked to, and I'm so impressed over again. Like, oh my gosh, I forgot he got to talk to that person, and they were such a great interview, and they gave their time to do this, and it's really impressive, and it runs such a wide array of musical subject matters. We have people in the higher level of choir and band and orchestra echelons, and we have people that are doing things like DCI and doing things like they're they're performing on Broadway, and they're producing television shows, and it's so many exciting things that you think that people who I think of it this way: anybody that I have in my classroom right now, in 20, 30 years, that could be them. And it's really
Right.
exciting.
Yeah, and really, that's a really interesting point, and you're so right, because when we talk to all of these people, you hear that thread of, maybe they're not currently performing, but they're involved in some way, and they can go back and speak to, this is what the value was to me when I was in school and what I took away from music education. So I hope it's maybe a little bit also of a shot in the arm for music educators to say, yeah, look, you're right. This could be your student at some point in time, for
Yeah.
sure.
I know we just had Crescendo, and one of the sessions was a performer who's been on Broadway, and I believe she's from Clarion, PA, which isn't that far from where we are. And some of my students were really into watching that particular breakout session. And then I pulled up the take note you had just done a few weeks before with another Broadway star from Clarion, and I
Right.
said, watch this whole episode, guys. You're really going to get even more of what you were already hearing. And that was a nice, like, oh, in addition, we have this. And for my students who, they don't maybe notice when a new take note comes out, but they got really excited that they saw that there's this additional information they could watch
Yeah.
about what they just learned.
Yeah, so we try to hit all audiences. One of the things we do is, like, we talk to PMEA members, and what is the neat story that they're doing that maybe wouldn't have been told in some other way. I look back, and you mentioned Crescendo, and we talked to you about Crescendo. I don't know if that was in 2023, maybe, and how you kind of helped your students prepare for Crescendo and actually made it like a conference.
Mhm.
And that, to me, is like this great story that we'd have never been able to tell in some other way had it not been for something like Take Note.
Mhm.
So I love this ability to talk to members to tell their stories.
Mhm.
So let's take a look at our first clip, which is a PMEA member. I'll just let him tell the story, because he can do it a lot better than I can. Again, a story that probably would have never been told in some way, had it not been for Take Note. John has done something absolutely extraordinary. He donated his liver. I guess it's fair to say a part of your liver, right? Okay.
Yes.
And that's noble in and of itself, but there is a music connection here to how that happened. So that's your tease. That's what we're going to talk about here during the podcast. But I want to kind of tell the story a little bit. So talk to us a little bit about this background. You have a connection to Mark Morningstar, who is the person who needed a liver. Talk to us a little bit about your connection, and then what happened here that you find out he needs a liver.
Sure. So I grew up in Huntingdon County, Pennsylvania. I went to the Huntington area high school whenever I was really getting serious about music and feeling like this was going to be a career. And Mark ended up being my high school percussion instructor. So I was a saxophone player. However, it was a smaller school and I had more opportunities to expand my horizons. So I did things like indoor percussion, some marching band ensembles, and Mark was the lead instructor for indoor percussion, which I had done in 7th grade through 12th grade. So obviously, I got to know him very well as a teacher, as a mentor. And it kind of evolved a little bit farther from that. Mark is a second father to me. I went to high school with his son, Jacob. We graduated in the same class. We were in band together. And next year, I will actually be in his wedding. So, the connections keep going. It's really exciting to be so close to that family. But
just an incredible story, and happy to report that both Sean and Mark are doing well after the surgery. That was a couple years ago now, but I mean, that music connection there is just astounding.
It is, and I've been involved with TOB, Tournament of Bands, since I was in high school. And I think anyone who's been involved with TOB, especially in this area, knows Mark Morningstar and the groups that he's had, on either a gym floor or a football field. And I think about those connections that every music teacher makes with students that they're working with all the time, with like he said, he's the dad of one of his friends also, and they were in music together. And those connections, it's a cliche maybe, but they make you family. And every band room, every choir room, every orchestra space across the state has those families and those people that become really close through music education. And this is just a beautiful example of that.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself, and it is amazing the connections, and I'm sure you've been in these situations where you go to a funeral for a music teacher, and the students there from decades of a music teacher's career. Nothing against the math teacher, but that doesn't happen for the math teacher. That is something that you
It's
see
a
with
different
music teachers.
connection.
Yeah.
We have students for years and consecutively, and there's just a different connection that takes place when you
Yeah.
are a music teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's move on to another topic area. We try to talk about what are the trends in music education. And I would say in the past, 5 years, 6 years, there's been a lot of changes in music education, probably more than in other times in the history of music education. And some teachers stay right on the forefront of that, some don't, and are very traditional and stick with what they've known. I would always say you're on the forefront of what's up and coming and what is best for students. And you really have been on the forefront of modern band, and how you incorporate into your classroom. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, sure. So, I was doing modern band before I realized there was a thing called modern band.
Huh.
Um, I can't take credit for what I was doing. I was learning it from my husband Joe's a band director and a music teacher, and he was doing stuff with guitar that I thought, oh, that's a really cool way to teach guitar that he had picked up from conferences and places he had gone to. And then somebody said you should go to this modern band 101. They're having it IUP. And I did, and I had the best time. It's they not only the modern band movement and what's going on with Music Will, not only are they teaching you great tricks and tips and tools that you can use very easily in your classroom, but it's fun, and you latch onto it really quickly and you enjoy it and the students enjoy it, and I think that's why it's so successful. And so I've been using what they would call the modern band techniques and pedagogy in my classroom, um, for several years, and it's something that, my students probably couldn't tell you, oh, we're doing the modern band, we're doing music as a second language pedagogy. They wouldn't know that. They would just know they learned how to play the ukulele and it was really fun, and that's all they need to know is that it's really fun. And the way that it's just accessible, I think, is what makes it so successful.
And kind of from the beginning of this, of the maybe the more official movement of modern band, really happened in Pennsylvania. It was kind of the trendsetter for the country, and so there have been a lot of leaders in Pennsylvania in the modern band movement. And coincidentally enough, we did a podcast about modern band. So let's take a look at a clip from that podcast, a little bit of a refresher on exactly what it is.
Manifesting itself here in Pennsylvania with a lot of thanks to Dave Deeds back in 2017-18, who we coordinated at the time, Little Kids Rock, now Music Will, a series of PD workshops around the state where we were able to kind of start implementing the pedagogy and the methodology to lots of different teachers. So also to add to what Henry said, I want to add that modern band, it's an ensemble, and it can be a performance ensemble, but it's also simply the lens through which we teach. So popular music can manifest itself, in general music classrooms and all sorts of other places. So it's kind of the avenue that we take as teachers to make sure we're reaching all of our students.
And I take away from that the goal of more music makers,
Yes.
in any way, right? Because what speaks to a student, and you have to find that, and you don't know. And we mentioned Clarion, Pennsylvania a few times, and so we all come back to our friend Tina Bennett there, who I just remember her telling me the story of when she started this ensemble and how these students that she never thought would have been involved in a program just flourished.
Oh,
And I'm sure you've seen that too.
absolutely. Do we want more people coming in the door, or do we want to turn people away? That's how I always think of it. Let's open the doors. Let's let more people in. Let's experience more music. I have a good friend who used to teach in Pennsylvania, and now she teaches college in South Carolina, Mandy Schlegel. And Mandy always says, more, I'm going to mess up her quote, but it's like more music, more people, more joy. And it's so true. It's so true. If this is going to reach people, let's use it. Let's use it. Let's get more people involved in music and enjoying music and making music by whatever tools we have.
And I'm not going to go into a large discussion or debate about the Super Bowl halftime show, but here we are just, literally hours after it. And if you go on social media, there's lots of debate about what it was. But that's probably a really good thing, because that shows there are some people who are passionate about this type of music making and what it means. And you don't have to like it. It doesn't have to be your genre, but I think it's important to appreciate other styles of music. And that's one of the things that I think modern band is helping to do in schools.
Anything that your students, and I don't listen to the same music that all of my students listen to. I listen to a lot of different types of music, but I'm not going to listen to all the same music that my students listen to. But if it's what gets them enjoy music, if that's what they wake up in the morning and they want to put on, then it's valid. It is something that is important to them, and it should be important to me to respect that and invite them to enjoy that as their genre of music. I'm teaching a lesson on hip hop this week, and it's one of my favorite lessons that we teach. It goes hand in hand with notation and rhythm and so many other things. It checks off so many boxes. And there's anytime we explore genres outside of what we traditionally do every day, it's another way. There's somebody else in that class that maybe I didn't reach before that suddenly picks their head up a little bit and goes, I recognize that song. I recognize that. And they want to they pay a little more attention. They're a little more engaged.
Yeah. And that's the name of the game, and you hook them, and you're teaching them something, but you're also teaching the other students. I mean, music is culture. It's it's more than just the notes on the page. We're learning about culture through it. And so, as we mentioned, modern band is one of the places that we've done that. But I think another area where that's happening now on the state level, and you referenced it a little bit earlier, is contemporary a cappella. And we now have this state ensemble, the contemporary a cappella ensemble at the all-state level, which has been a great success in one year. And I'm sure you're seeing that, and you're hearing from music educators who say this is a good thing.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of music educators across the state, and it maybe might not look exactly like our all-state contemporary a cappella ensemble looks, but there's a lot of people that are performing popular music in all of their ensembles. And this is something that we're finding is happening in this format as an a cappella group across the state. I know region one, so districts 1 and 5 had their inaugural event this year. District 12, District 4 added it in with their jazz bands for their jazz festival. It's growing very rapidly. And when you start something new, and I was in on the ground floor with the committee that kind of started talking about, well, what would a contemporary a cappella ensemble look like? You're always nervous the first time they do it. And I remember sitting there at their concert this year, and the butterflies I had in my stomach before the students came out and performed were definitely there. And then they ran out on that stage, and they had so much energy and so much passion, and the place just felt so alive, and it was exciting, and it was fun, and it was wonderful. So it was a real win for PMEA, I think.
And you mentioned the District 1 event. Part of that event, they had Deke Sharon come in, who is kind of like the big name in contemporary a cappella. Is kind of invented it in some ways, written some books about it as well. So coincidentally enough, we had him on the podcast maybe a year or so ago to talk about what this is and what it means, and for him to tell us some really interesting stories of his career on the national stage making this happen. So let's take a look at the clip with Deke.
I realized I just need to be like the dog in Wallace and Gromit and run around and fix things. They want to fire me, but this is our one chance to be on network television. If we do this right, it could be absolutely magical. And I got a note a couple weeks later, and it was interesting because it just said, "We see what you're doing and we appreciate it. Sony." I wish I still had the note. Just Sony, like no names, nothing like that. Yeah. Anyway, by the end of the first season, they made me a producer and gave me full reign to really make sure the creative stuff went down the way it needed to, because as you well know, a cappella is people and nothing but people. And when people are the instrument, their countenance, their health, their mood, their interpersonal relationships, and the relationships between the groups, also all these things affected each other.
And I didn't set that up appropriately, but he was talking, I think it was The Voice. I believe he was
the sing off.
Okay. That he was a part of that production team. And he goes into detail in the podcast and talks about that and how he really helped to create it. And interestingly enough, the contemporary a cappella conductor for this year's All-State Ensemble, JD Frizzell, I just had interviewed him for a podcast that we'll release here in a week or so. And he talks about working with Deke and writing a book, kind of like the book about this genre. So kind of another genre that's up and coming, which goes back to my original point, where it's always evolving, and we have to be aware of that to meet students where they are. And contemporary a cappella is absolutely doing that.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it's something I loved in his interview and in watching the show, The Sing Off, is in between, the actual competition parts, they would show people just from different groups, not just the group that was about to perform, getting together and singing. And yeah, it was a competition show. Yeah, there was going to be a winner. But it was just that camaraderie of coming together and producing something with your voice. And it was really great. And I also love things that show people putting together and practicing singing, because it's not like Glee. It's not like a scripted show where everyone just, now I'm going to sing because I know all the parts and all my friends know all the harmonies, and we didn't even practice. It just, the reality of it takes a lot of work. And seeing that it on network television, I remember when that came out, I loved it.
Yeah. So again, like that's a very cool interview, like to go, yeah, to hear if you want to hear about contemporary acapella, but if you want to hear some of those behind the scenes stories, like Deke just shared a little bit in that clip, it's absolutely fascinating. And it's another one of those times in the previous 99 episodes where I thought I knew what the interview was going to be about, but when I was in it, I realized I did not expect this, and it's always for the good. It's always for the better. In what I've heard. And so that was an example of that. Okay, so another area that we have talked about is a favorite area of mine, policy. Now, I know that's not a lot of people's favorite areas, but the bulk of my work at PMEA is dealing with education policy. And I'm fascinated to talk to policymakers, but I also want to make it so they're accessible. And we understand where they're coming from, and they understand music education. I know as you and I were talking a little before this podcast, we talked about some of the policymakers who've been on here. Pennsylvania Senator Carolyn Committa, who is just a phenomenal advocate for music education. And we came to find out after we met her and had been advocating with her for a while, she played the sousaphone in her high school band. And in fact, we tasked her to find the photo for us, which she did. And they put on their social media, and it was a big to-do for them. And we've had other policymakers on who even if they haven't participated in music, understand the value of it. So I hope that we're able to, maybe bridge the gap for people. These are real people that are making these decisions, and they do value what we have to say.
And having former music students in those seats is so important, and it's really a great ally for us to, because we right now we're raising a generation in our classrooms of people that are going to be these policymakers someday, and that's important to always remember, I think.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, like as I think of some policymakers, like the current lieutenant governor, he was in the choir at the local high school here. Now he only did it for 1 year, but I still remind him frequently that yes, you did it, you were in there, but he gets it. And he's come to support events where we've done with music education. I haven't had him on the podcast yet, but we will. I was talking to a friend once who's a lobbyist in Harrisburg. I just happened to run into her in the Capitol building, and we sat down, we're having a cup of coffee or something. And she says, by the way, do you know that this person in the I think it was in the House was a country western singer? And no, I didn't. But like great information to know, because then there's that music connection. Everyone has some connection to music. And it's so fun to find out. Over the years, but even before the podcast, we have talked to Pennsylvania Secretaries of Education, usually when they're just freshly put into the seat. So we did that a few years ago when Noe Ortega was put in at the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And this is one of those moments, and you're going to see in this clip, where I didn't know this, but he tells us his connection to music. So let's take a look at that. Arts and music played a role in that, or even kind of in your developmental years? Has arts and music played a role in your life?
Absolutely. And so, one of the things very few people know about me is as early as I think I started in junior high school, I picked up a musical instrument. I'm a brass player. I played the trumpet originally. And it was something that really became my extracurricular. I wasn't very gifted in the athletics. I did everything that I could to try to do something. And music is something I gravitated to. I mentioned that I grew up in Texas. In fact, I grew up in South Texas, right around the Corpus Christi area, very close to the Mexican border. And one of the things that was very popular at the time was mariachi music, which essentially is a tradition that comes from Mexico. It's got some roots in Germany. And I ended up joining a mariachi band probably in my junior high school to high school years. I played jazz band in high school as well. And then ultimately marching band. I was the drum major for our school for about 2 years. Yeah. And so, I had every indication music was a big part of my life. It was a part of my sisters as well who are younger than me. All of us went through that path. And I think it really gave me, for starters, kind of the discipline that I needed with regards to being motivated in learning and extracurricular, but it also gave me the incentive. And I think we often forget that young people need an incentive for why they want to get overly involved in learning in the extracurricular. And that was me. It was a way of life. And if everything that I called out in terms of the music involvement is seasonal, right? So I never had a break.
Right.
I was always practicing. I was always in a marching band. There was always a competition that I was participating in. So it gave me all that skill, and I want to say self-esteem as well as I got older, and really did fashion me as what eventually became sort of my leadership and approach to learning as well.
I mean, how could you sum it up any better than that?
Everything about that is fantastic.
Yeah.
It
And
really
so
is.
somebody that gets it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because you don't make your way up to drum major of a marching band in South Texas by not being dedicated.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't make your way to Secretary of Education without being dedicated either. And I will say, you know, the Secretary of Education after Noe Ortega, Dr. Mameen, was very much a sports guy, but he understood music and he understood the value of it and articulated that very well. And we don't have a clip from that one, but I'd invite you to go back. He's no longer Secretary of Education, but I'd invite you to go look at that. And it's another person who really put their money where their mouth is. When we launched the Arts Education Data Project, I mentioned the lieutenant governor. The lieutenant governor came to our launch because we did it at his high school, and Dr. Mumeen came in from Harrisburg to be there and be part of that launch and to watch students perform because he gets it. And I mention that because I want people to realize there are people in government, there are elected representatives, and even those that are appointed and confirmed by the elected representatives who get it, who understand and really do try to work for the best of all students. And there's just some examples of it right there.
I've been to Advocacy Day twice now, I think. And every time I've been there, somebody comes up to me, either while we're out talking to people or when there's somebody performing, and they'll say, you know, I was in my high school band, or I played cello in middle school, or, you know, I sang in the choir. Or when we stop to give papers to, you know, the person at the desk at the front door, they're like, I loved music. I did PMEA events when I was in high school. And that's always great to hear that they're in that office and they get it.
For sure. And it happens constantly. It happens in Harrisburg. It happens in Washington, D.C. It happens in local offices that we're in. So I always encourage music teachers to reach out to legislators, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, because they maybe need to be reminded about what they did in music education and come and see what you and your students are doing. Especially in these times where politics are very divided. Music is a very uniting thing. And maybe that is the uniting thing to help us with some education policy. When we talk about, here's a good thing happening in music classes, and show them what's happening in your class. Okay, I'll step off my soapbox there for a minute. So, all right, besides policymakers, we've talked to a lot of leaders in music education. On the national level, you know, we've had Lynn Tuttle, who was at the National Association for Music Education, now is at the American String Teachers Association. Amanda Carhughes, who is at the National Association for Music Education, their policy person. We've brought her on to talk policy. Chiho Feindler from Save the Music Foundation. And these are people who've also been to our events. And I think it goes back to maybe we were talking about earlier. Like I like to stay on the pulse of what's happening. Let's hear from them and have them tell us some of their stories. I think that's valuable for music teachers to hear.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, the things that sometimes I think we can feel like we're alone in what we're doing in our classrooms and maybe in our districts, or, just there's rough days. And it's nice to know that there's organizations that exist simply to see how they can help us. And that's a beautiful thing, to think that there is um opportunities out there for teachers in classrooms.
One of those folks at the national level who um, I have known for essentially my entire career. I mean, before I was at PMEA working in the music products industry, is Mary Larson. So Mary's been everything. Mary was a music teacher. Mary was a performer. Mary worked at the Texaco Foundation. And then I won't tell the story. Go back and watch the podcast, and she tells a little bit of the story. But how she ended up at NAM, became the director of public and government affairs there, our public affairs and government relations. It's different than our title, but public affairs and government relations. She was the executive director of the NAM Foundation. And then she became the senior policy advisor at NAM before she retired just last year. Mary has been my mentor for years. Mary's been my mentor and unofficial big sister for years. So to have her on the podcast, right, literally the month that she was retiring, to hear some stories and to get inspired was really, really special for me, because there has never been a time I've talked to Mary when I haven't been inspired in some way. And I said this on the podcast, but Mary, I think I said this on the podcast. If not, I'll say it again. Mary if you know Mary has a plan for you. You just don't know what it is. But Mary's going to guide you through that plan and is going to help you through it. And I fully believe that. And she has done that for me in so many things over the years. But one of the things she's so wonderful at is inspiring even people she's not met. And we have a clip with her where she kind of talks directly to music teachers. So let's take a look.
There's a very natural fear that was in the air way back when I was a music teacher. And that is, well, if we advocate for music, we're essentially advocating for our jobs. And there's a lot of political fire, hot coals to walk on when, you're crossing over into sort of that either subliminal messaging about advocating for music. So we had a language problem, the way I see it. We had a language problem and kind of an organizational problem. When I say organization, organizing messages across various very important organizations, being them national or state. So we had to be very intentional about sort of flipping the script in a way, because music educators need, I think I remember having deep conversations with the genuine fear that music educators had about, if I advocate for what I think is important for students, then it impacts my placement in my profession and my job, and that makes me uncomfortable because of the intensity of my political environment, my boss and my boss's boss, and completely reasonable. I mean, that's a completely reasonable thing. So how could we move forward from a reactive position into an active role as advocates? And the core of that was putting students at the center. And if we put students at the center and we make arguments about the value of music for students in a broad, full curriculum, and we also flipped the script to be not reactive, which it really had been cuts, the fear of cuts, right? Which will always be there, to a proactive, celebratory, community engagement perspective, that maybe we all could be more comfortable about advocating. Because we had to get the people who were going to be influenced the most, teachers, right, parents, whatnot, to be more comfortable about what they were expressing. So how could we flip the narrative? And I think that remains true. And I think why music education advocacy has changed, and you're even more close to this than I am because I'm on the business side, which our business people are very close to our music educators, is we're celebrating more loudly.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating more visibility more loudly. We're engaging. We're having more mayors come out and conduct the wind band. We're celebrating the beginners and having the principal of that school conduct the beginners ensemble at the when they finally can put their hands on three notes. I think we're worried. We will always be committed to quality and excellence and our highest performing wind ensembles that are winning intergalactic competitions. That will always be important. But maybe we're celebrating learning along the way a lot more. And that becomes our advocacy voice. We're celebrating the role in every person's life, from the rank beginner to the parent who's seeing their child experiencing this for the first time. I think we're louder, and because we believe it, and therefore I think one of the byproducts is not necessarily an easier teaching schedule. I think maybe more students are coming into us and want to be with us. Maybe our districts aren't keeping up with the necessary hires they need to have as robust curriculum offerings that they tell us that they want. But that then is part of our advocacy. We have to then, well, if you want all these kids in the pool, we're going to have more lifeguards. We have to have more people experiencing the benefits of music. By making it louder, we also create another advocacy agenda to have more. So I hope that, and I know not every music educator has made that switch, but I hope that a music educator's career is longer, fuller, more complete, because they are really celebrating what they do every day.
That was a little bit longer clip, but I just think the message was so important in there.
Yeah. For me, this might be my favorite interview you did in the 99 episodes. Just every time I've ever heard Mary talk, and in that entire interview, everything she says is so vital. It's so true. It's just great advice, and it's inspirational. So absolutely.
And I will say, Mary's also very humble. She talked in there about changing the conversation. Well, Mary helped to lead the change of that conversation in the work that she did at NAMM. And then she talks about the importance of celebrating. Well, Mary helped to create things like the Best Communities for Music Education that NAMM does, which has then spurred other types of those awards with other organizations. But when I'm in conversations with those other organizations, the NAMM Best Communities always comes up because that is done so well in his just every year when that list comes out. It doesn't matter if you've won the thing for 15 years, you're still celebrating it like it's your first time.
And every superintendent that has their school gets it, they're celebrating it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it's something to hold up and say, look at our music department, look at our community, look how we value music education, and even on a simpler level, if I've learned anything from listening to Mary talk, years ago, I think you had some kind of a get together advocacy thing at one of our conferences. And I remember I got to sit beside her. And one of the things I take from it and I try to spread around is always be advocating. There's nothing that isn't worth talking about. If it's just, take a video of kids playing boom whackers or orff instruments, or just a rehearsal that went well. There's never anything that can't be celebrated. And that's
many
really
years ago, when the Support Music Coalition was very, very active, when we were this group was meeting monthly, I think at one point, there was someone, and I'm blanking on his name, but he was a mayor actually at the time of a city in California, but he was part of the coalition, and he coined this phrase, relentlessly positive. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And Mary has talked about that so much. Bob Morrison, another leader in this space, who has always said about you want to be proactive, not reactive. Well, that being relentlessly positive is helping you to be proactive. So celebrating, the best communities win, but also exactly the things you're talking about, show what's happening. That's the win. That's good advocacy.
Absolutely. And seeing kids make music, seeing young adults make music, that means more to school board members, to community members, to stakeholders than talking about things that might seem hard to grasp from a person that's not in a music classroom's sensibilities. But when they see the joy that is on a kid's face when they get those first three notes on the clarinet, that makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
Absolutely. And in many instances, it keeps the kid coming to school, which we know other subject areas can do that as well. But we have so many stories where that happens. So we've covered a lot of, we haven't covered all 99 episodes, but we've covered a lot of topic areas that we've talked about. But there is one topic area, and we'll make our last topic area, that we haven't covered that tends to come up a lot, even when it's not the actual topic of the podcast. And I bet you know what that is because you're shaking your head.
Mark likes marching bands.
Mark likes marching band. That's exactly right. Yes. And I try not to have every episode be about marching band, but I will say it's been fascinating to be able to talk to people like Steve Rondinero, who is this legend in DCI and in the drum corps world, who has hosted the broadcast for so many years and has watched that broadcast evolve over time. To talk to him, to talk to Matt and Susie Harloff from Avon High School after they won the Grand National Championship. It's because these are people. To talk to Alfred Watkins, we had him on the podcast before he was an all-state guest conductor. But to talk to Alfred Watkins, who was at Lassiter High School, who when I was in high school, I still have on such a pedestal. It's been absolutely fascinating to do that. And I hope other people find that as fascinating, because I know there's a lot of marching band people out there who are into it as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot of us choir directors who were former marching band kids too.
And I've seen you at marching band competitions.
I get into it.
Yeah. So as much as I love the field shows and all of that, my favorite event of the year is, you're shaking your head, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which is just, I think it's fascinating on so many ways. If you've never been there, it's close enough to go. I encourage you to go. I've been there a few times in person. I taught with a band that was in it. It's an amazing thing to be part of. Just if the logistics fascinate me alone. But the bands that you were getting there, I've been to the Rose Parade. It's different. It's awesome, but there's something extra special about the Macy's Parade that you have to do that routine in the Star, whether it is sunny or whether it's pouring down rain, which I experienced, whether it is 12 degrees outside or 50 degrees outside. So one of the most fascinating podcasts we did was I got to talk to Wesley Watley, who is now retired from Macy's, but he's the creative director, and the name that if you're in the marching band space with the parade, that is synonymous with the parade. So we got to talk to him, and I can't do a Take Note 100th anniversary without talking marching band. So let's show a clip of Wesley talking about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We're in one of these specials years ago. If you can't tell, I'm like a Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade groupie here. But one of these specials years ago followed Savannah Guthrie as, they did that read through of the script and what that process was like. So I'm curious, what is that coordination with with NBC and Macy's? How does that all work throughout the year?
Sure. NBC has been our broadcasting partner now for decades, and they do a terrific job covering the show as it passes in front of Macy's Herald Square. And my team, it's really our job to partner with producers and make sure that we not only look great on the street, as I was saying, but as we pass in front of the camera, that we're able to talk about each unit and really celebrate each unit in the way that, like, for instance, that marching band, whatever that blurb is before the marching band performs, we want to make sure that we have the directors' names pronounced just right, and that we talk about a fun fact about the band and really show off the band's accomplishments. We do that in lockstep, and we are working year round with our broadcast partners to make sure that it looks and sounds and everything is represented beautifully on camera. Again, it's really, in my mind, it's two shows. We have our live show on the streets, which is, again, I can't say it enough. I know a lot of folks only see our broadcast. If you have a chance to do it in your life, come to New York City, see the show live. It is such a special experience.
He said what I said. It is. It's an incredible experience. But so is marching band and drum corps. I know your daughter has marched drum corps.
She did open class corps this summer, and so we traveled back and forth to New England several times. We saw 3 parades in one day on the 4th of July throughout different parts of Massachusetts, and I got to go to Indianapolis and watch preliminaries, and that was amazing. The whole day was, everything about it was just incredible. And just like with the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, seeing it on TV, flow marching's great, but seeing it live, hearing it live is incredible. It's just the big difference. And, with Macy's, I don't think it is Thanksgiving without waking up and having the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on. It's always been a part of my life. And it's really cool that you got to talk to him.
Yeah, that was it was so much fun. And you're right. There is, you talk about DCI and Grand Nationals, even, like, seeing it live, and it's so theatrical now that even if you are not a band director, believe me, there's something you're going to get out of seeing this. If you're a choir director, if you're a theater director, you're going to see something there that you're going to say, wow, that's amazing. And maybe that's something that I can incorporate into what I do and potentially have my students do. So good stuff. Well, here we are. We've come to the end of recapping 99 episodes.
It just,
and it's been an absolute blast to do the 99 episodes, but Becky, it's been a blast to kind of look back on them with you today.
Well, thank you. This was fun. This really was. I get excited. Yeah, maybe it's just me, but I get excited when I get that little notification that there's a new take note out, and it's fun to watch. I've enjoyed the 5 that I've done so far. I'm looking forward to the next 5. So thank you for having me, Mark.
Absolutely, and I'm sure you're going to be back because you're such an innovator, and I'm sure we'll have you back. And just the tease of the episodes that are coming up here in the next 2 months, we're going to do what we always do. We talk to all of the all-state guest conductors, and even if you are not a student in these ensembles, it is fascinating to listen to these directors. I learn so much from them about the music that they're playing, why they've selected it, maybe their philosophy. So I encourage you to listen. We interview all 6 of them, and they'll be releasing here in the next 2 months. So, Becky, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you all for joining us on this 100th edition of PMEA's Take Note podcast. We want to thank our sponsor, the Grove City College Department of Music. We will see you next time for number 101.